on April 26, 2024. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. Nash.
I move to approve the agenda of the April 26, 2024 Board Budget Workshop.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion has been made by Mrs. Nash and seconded by Mrs. McFadden. Is there any discussion? All right, board members, let's vote.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Washington.
I am voting yes for this.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. Porter,
I'm also voting in the affirmative.
thank you. Should we do a hand?
Okay.
All in favor, raise your right hand. Dr. Elkin Scott, are you there? All right, as far as I can tell, 5 of us are present, and all 5 have voted in the affirmative, so the motion carries. Just for everyone's information purposes, Mrs. Agostini is not on the line, and I'm not certain if Dr. Elkin Scott is or not, but we have 4 of our board members that are either online or not present. All right, we'll move to the next agenda item, which is 3.1, a discussion on the 2024-25 general budget, fund budget. Dr. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. During our board meeting this past week, we presented the superintendent's recommendation for the budget to the board. At that time, the board requested that we do a workshop so the board could have sufficient time to ask questions, but also to prioritize the budget in accordance with the board's responsibility to approve the budget. So today, we have Mr. Struthers here in person. Ms. Williams is online and is available to answer any questions. In board docs, you will see that you will have the budget that we presented, the superintendent's recommendation, of which you have a hard copy in front of you. You will also find the 5-year strategic plan. This is our 5-year plan that addresses all of our academic goals, as well as you will see a list of questions that board members submitted that they would like to have answers to. Mr. Struthers is going to walk us through a very short presentation, and then we will ask that the board make a determination first and foremost as to what rate of millage that they're willing to request from the county council. Based upon that millage request, then we'll turn the list over to the board for the board to begin to prioritize what they feel are the priorities moving forward for the district. So that's how the meeting will work today. If the board has questions, we have our experts in the room that are willing to address those concerns that the board may ask or need additional information.
I have a question before we get started.
Yes, Dr. Elkin Scott, please go ahead.
Yes, I'm just wondering, when did we have a conversation about whether we were going to do millage or not? I mean, I don't recall, and I could have been not at a meeting, so I do apologize if I wasn't. But did we ever have a discussion at all about even considering a millage increase?
Not that I'm aware of, Dr. Scott.
No,
Yeah,
Dr. Scott, Dr. Elkin Scott, that is the purpose of part of the conversation today. What was presented on Tuesday is the superintendent's recommendation to the board. The board now needs to have conversation to determine from the board what the will of the board is around what millage rate the board would like to pursue. So no, there was no conversation before that.
Well, that's my point.
Yes.
That's the point that I'm trying to make. I mean, I just think it's very unnerving to have this conversation now when we just had the Ms. Williams' team to present something to us, and respect was not given to the board prior to all of this, just to even ask that question from the beginning. Board, would you like for us to consider a millage rate? And if so, we're going to come back to you guys with some options. I think for courtesy, that should have been had before all of this. But I guess now it's too late for that. But I'm a little disappointed that we're having this now and didn't have that at the very beginning.
All right, thank you, Dr. Elkin-Scott.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Porter?
I just wanted to note that the document that we looked at on Tuesday, I did notice that there was the blue line at the bottom that stated if we considered items numbers 1 through 23, that there would be a mill increase, but it was written. We didn't necessarily put that into words and discuss it, but just note that line item at the bottom just so you can see that for information.
And Ms. Porter, just for information for you to know, normally for board meetings and superintendent and board relationships, normally that is discussed before we even get a paper, even with the blue line. That's my point, and that was before your time, that we
Okay.
would have that discussion first before anything was presented to us and a line was drawn to even show you the millage of each one. So thank you, I saw that, but that wasn't my point. My point was being, we never had the conversation initially before this was given to us.
I got you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Porter. All right, Dr. Moore will continue with the presentation.
Board members, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Mr. Struthers.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Mr. Chair, members of the board, board members who are joining us online, and others who are joining us online, thank you all for coming to this board workshop. We appreciate you very much. Yes, we're here today, and you have in front of you the first reading of the budget that was presented on Tuesday night. And there are a couple things I would like to point out before we go forward with this first reading of the budget. On page 2, you'll notice some revenue highlights and some expenditure highlights. Please be aware that at this point in time, with legislation still out, legislation still discussing what will happen through the House version and the Senate version yet to come, that there has been no solid revenue determination made at this point in time. So we are still in the stages of determining what that final revenue will be at this time. So with that, we are also determining what the final expenditures will be, because we have to base those expenditures around what the final revenue projections are. And therefore, I think we normally have a second reading or a final reading late in the year once those revenue projections are finalized. But I would like to point that out. At this point in time, things are still moving. They're a moving target, and that's the purpose of the first reading. We talked about a budget that presented about around a $388 million general fund budget at that time, and that was a $388 million general fund budget based on a full millage increase, but other options were also presented at that time. We also presented a 0 mill increase and a 9.2 mill increase as well, to give the board the opportunity to see what each of those options would look like. So we're here today to determine and to discuss and have this workshop to determine which is the best route to go, because we have to take this before the county council next week, and we would like your input on which way we think we should go with the budget and the priorities. We've laid the budget priorities out throughout the year, and we want to try to prioritize those and meet as many of those budget priorities as possible at this point in time. So with your first reading of the budget, those are the things that I would like to point out, but keep in mind that we'll go through those budget priorities again, and we'll point out the things that can be met with a 0 mil increase, with a 9.2 mil increase, and a full 19.4 mil increase. And we'll give you all the opportunity for discussion on each of those priorities. And I do have projected on the board a presentation that will kind of lead us through that, and it will also give you the opportunity to ask questions based around each of those priorities. So initially, if we as a board and as a district look at a 0 mil increase, we would look at a general fund revenue increase of around $22 million. And with that increase, the items that are listed here are the items that could be funded out of the priorities. There are 9 priorities listed here. We could fund those priorities with a 0 mil increase. We see the priorities listed based on the survey, based on the board survey and results, things turned back in, and based also on the superintendent's priorities as well. So if you read through 1 through 9, there are things in 1 through 9 that are standard. In other words, we have to have these things in our budget. We have to have health insurance for our employees. We have to offer our teachers a step increase. We also have to increase our annual operation contracts, such as landscaping, our energy contracts, utilities, things that just increase normally and naturally. Also, there's an estimated liability and property insurance increase, and an SRO contract increase. Of course, our property and liability insurance increases pretty much annually. I can't think of a time when our liability insurance did not increase. And also, we had a classification and compensation study done back a few months ago, in which Mr. Russell with MAG Corporation came in and presented that survey, and did a very good job with that survey. And we landed on a figure that would take the classified people, the employees, up in salary, the majority of them, and the fiscal impact of that would be about $5.1 million. Also, all non-teacher salaries employees would be considered a step in our non-mill increase proposal here. Teacher salary schedule increase, the House landed on a $47,000 starting salary, and I think our goal as a district and as a board is to be competitive. And in order to be competitive, I think we would have to start at $50,000. Otherwise, we would have a lot of trouble recruiting teachers and a lot of trouble retaining teachers at that point in time. So our recommendation is to start our salary schedule at $50,000, and the cost of that is $7.7 million to do that. Also, we have some teacher growth that we want to try to implement as well. That would be 7 teachers for growth. And as you all know, ESSER funding is running out September the 30th, and we have 31 positions in ESSER funding that we would like to try to fit into the no mill increase option of this budget. So those are the things laid out on the non-mill increase. And 9 items, 9 items which probably get pretty close to $22 million there. Secondly would be
Excuse me.
lines 1 through 23.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Ms. McFadden.
So I think we went over this at the last board meeting. So I was just going to say on number 22, that is a mandate from the House. And that kind of needs to be in the zero meal increase. Because even if the board decides that we will do the meal, even if they say we vote that we'll go to the max, county council can come back and say, well, we're not going to give you any millage increase. It could be zero.
Yeah.
And so all of those things that need to be increased need to be in the 9. So if we can kind of walk through that process due to time, because we did go over this with Ms. Williams at the last meeting. So in essence of time, if there's a way that we can go ahead and start looking at these things that are in that top 9 that we can do without going over mill, because that $5.1 million for the classification compensations, if we can start breaking that down so that we have time to actually go through that, because that's a lot, that's a big chunk of money. And as Dr. Elkin Scott said at the last meeting, she wants to make sure that we are paying our bookkeepers, our receptionists, our data coordinators their fair share. So if we can start going through like those things that were mentioned at that meeting, to start breaking those down so that we can see those priorities first and then go through and see what we have left over, because we have only $16.9 million that we can actually spend. So we're going to have to find somewhere with zero meal. We're going to have to find somewhere where we got to get rid of $8 million, according to the full meal of $24 million. So I would like to start, if we can, Mr. Chair, and work out that 16.9 million and get that done first, and then work on what we want later in the day or in the afternoon, because that's what's going to have to be approved for zero meal. Because like I said, we could go and say full meal, but county council may very well say we're not going to be able to do that. So is that okay, Mr. Chair, or how would you? Just for the essence of time, it's 1:30 and.
Well, I think that's what we're here to basically discuss, is things that we think need to be moved around. So
Sure.
if you would address that and let us know, exactly how that would work.
And I completely agree with what Ms. McFadden just said. It makes a whole lot of sense to me.
Sure. So what we can do then is, just pull up a live sheet here and make some of those moves to see how they work out. And that was 22 that you would like to see moved into?
Yes, sir. That's the CPR training. It's really not expensive, though.
Yeah, we
it's
if you notice, we have, about $7 million left there. So, but let's just go ahead and see what happens with that. Okay. I projected what I'm doing on the screen. It needs to be a little
Can
bit
you
bigger.
enlarge it so that everyone can see it? Because I see the people in the back like,
They didn't bring their reading glasses, did they? I see, okay. Okay. Is that a little bit better? So I took, removed, and remind me to go back and make sure I actually did remove 22. I think I did, and place it in the zero mil category for $23,500. I need to learn how to control this mouse, don't I? What you see is we still have a little bit of room there in that 22 mil category. So, you know, if that's what the board wants to see, we can certainly put that there. I'll leave the number 23 there just to indicate that it was moved from another spot. And we can remove it from the lower categories, but that is
So, Mr. Chair,
not sure what.
we'll just go ahead and turn the meeting over to the board at this point and let the board decide what they want to move up and down and determine what millage rate they want to present to county council.
Thank you, Dr. Moore.
Mr. Chair, may I interject? Oh, sorry.
All right, let's see, who spoke first? Oh,
Nancy,
I'll defer to the board member, to Ms. Washington.
Just kind of does away with it. Yeah.
okay, Ms. Washington.
If you,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Dr. Elkins Scott.
this is Ms. Washington.
Oh, this can be tough for me, just so y'all know. Yes, Ms. Washington.
So I just want to be clear, because we keep talking about the board deciding on the millage. That has to take a vote. Am I wrong in my thinking? Because as I was researching this about the millage increase, I've seen past board meetings in 2022 where they actually voted. So are we able to make a decision like that without having a vote?
I don't think we can,
Okay, thank you.
and I don't think we can vote on this meeting for that either, so.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. McFadden.
could we maybe start with the questions that board members have and go through that and have administration address the questions?
Sure, let's do that. Board members, any questions? And I guess, okay. We do have some questions that we've already submitted in board docs. Let's open those up and see what they are.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Nash.
if you would like, I can read each one, and then we can go that way, if that's okay with the board, just so it's clear for anybody that's on the phone. Is that okay with everybody online?
That would be fine, but also I have 2 or 3 questions, and I guess Mrs. Nash, you could just add those to the end. I could text them to you if you like.
That works for me too, because I do too, because I didn't have time to get mine in. I have like a couple myself. So yeah, Dr. Scott, if you want to text those to me, then I will take a look at those first, and then I'll just go ahead and start reading down the questions, and we'll start from the top, and then I'll get Dr. Elkins Scott's at the end, and then the 2 that I have as well, because they may be answered.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I have a
Ms.
question.
Porter, yes, go ahead.
Where am I to find these questions in board docs?
They should be listed on item, if you're on item 3.1, it should be listed there as Budget Board Work Session Questions. There's 3 attachments, and that's one of the 3.
Okay, thank you. And is this live? I can submit questions on there, or I need to send messages to?
If you want to send send it, you could send it via email too. If you want to send that email to me, Nikki, then I will, either that or text, either one is fine.
Okay, thank you.
All right, perfect, thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chair? Okay. The first question is, this is for Dr. Moore. What is your vision for 2024, 2025 school year? And funding should align with that vision. And so that is the first question.
So I will actually answer question 1, 2, and 3 all together, as well as 4, because they are basically from in the same vein. And so my vision for our priorities for next year are aligned with the visions that the priorities that the board and I discussed at our retreat back in September, October timeframe. At that time, the priorities were fiscal accountability, human capital, academics, which are clearly outlined in our 5-year strategic plan, which is attached to the board doc, with math being a focus, and the last was safety and security. So those are the priorities that were identified, and those are the priorities that we will continue to move forward on, as well as ensuring that the academic focus and the goals that we set in our 5-year strategic plan that was submitted to the state, and we just did our update for that as far as signatures from Mr. Trapp as the chair and myself, as well as additional priorities that the board may give. Now, how will all of these tie into the superintendent's budget? It ties into those areas that you see in the first 9 that we originally provided to the board at the Tuesday meeting. In order for us to achieve our academic goals, we have to have staff in our buildings, and that's where providing our teachers and our classified staff with competitive salaries is a priority there, because when we have great teachers in the classroom and great staff in our buildings, it creates an environment where people want to come to work and where our students can excel academically. Every priority that's lined in our first 9 that is not required by state statute or required operational costs is focused around ensuring that we have the best people in our buildings every single day to meet the needs of our students. And so that's why those are my priorities. They also align with the feedback that we received from our budget surveys that we did early January and early February, which we surveyed all of our district employees as well as our parents, community members, as well as the board. So that's what the priorities are based upon.
Board members, any questions or comments?
Oh, and let me add also our SC Ready scores were an integral part of that data, and looking at how do we best prepare our teachers to support our students. So we have our science of reading that's going on, as well as one of the items that you will see in the state superintendent's budget is Palmetto Math, and that's to increase our math score. So that's where these priorities are coming from. I forgot to mention that. Thank you.
I guess my question would be, I'm still not clear on Dr. Moore's answer, because it was more general than a little more detail of how this ties into with the goals that we have set with the superintendent and the budget.
Is there specific goals, Dr. Scott, as far as if you want to know the specific goals, we can go into the academic, the strategic 5-year plan. The goal for safety and security is to create an environment where our faculty, staff, and students feel safe. And so we've implemented our safety and screening protocols. We are continuing to do our pop-ups for our middle schools. We will continue to do that through next year, and that's our safety and security goal. As far as our academic goals, specifically my focus is math.
Can I interrupt for 1 second, Dr. Moore? Can I interrupt for 1 second? So just for clarity.
Yes, ma'am.
Because that was great what you just said. And I think what I'm really looking for is, you're on point, but I guess I'm looking for maybe numbers or amounts with that. Like, for example, you just said, like, for safety, this is what we're looking for. We've added more pop-ups, we've added this. So do you have a dollar amount that ties to that so we can have more of a visual of what the money looked like going in that area?
Do we have a dollar count, Mr. Struther, for what it's currently costing us for our safety screenings? Because we did not put any additional cost in or request in this budget for additional safety screenings, Dr. Scott. We're planning to continue what we've already been doing in the past.
I know, and that was one of my questions and concerns too, because I'm thinking, do we have a backup plan where if something happens and we need to add more, or if there's a dysfunction with the machine that we have one on standby, or if we need to hire, for example, a few more hall monitors because we realize that next year at one of the middle schools or high school that we need more people in place. So do we have a cushion for that? Because I didn't notice that, and that's why I asked that question.
Yes, one of the contract increases that we presented in the budget is for the security contract. And overall, in the aggregate, that includes, of course, supplies and materials, purchase services, professional and technical security, and staff services security. And the difference between last year, the current year's budget and the future year budget is about $240,810. And also, there's a need for an increase in the SRO contract of about $434,000. Does that answer your question?
And that's included in line 3. No, which line is that, Stephen? That's security is line 4.
So,
And
Just to
line
clarify.
3 and
so
4.
The increase, potential increases to the security to the staffing for the metal detectors is included in line 3. And the cost for the SROs is broken out and included in line 4.
thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
This is Ms.
Dr.
Washington.
Evans Scott.
this is Ms.
Oh,
Washington.
Ms. Well,
No.
gosh, Ms. Washington.
No, you're fine. And I appreciate you all kind of pinpointing that, because when I look at the descriptions, I mean, they're just kind of general. And so when I'm thinking about, and that's why I specifically asked that question. So thank you, Dr. Scott, for even asking for a little bit more description, because that's what I wanted to know. If something happens, how are we accounting for that in the upcoming budget with academic safety being a part of your goals? And so I appreciate the breakdown of your focus, Dr. Moore, as well. But that's why I'm asking, because the description doesn't say, it doesn't give some of that information. So thank you so much for answering that.
And then as far as the academics, that is where teacher salary increase is one of the primary focuses, ensuring that we are competitive in our salaries so that we can attract the best talent to be in our classrooms to provide that support to our students. We also want to make sure that's line 2, which is the teacher salary schedule with the step increase, which is mandated, but we also want to make sure that we're competitive. So as of right now, teacher salaries have to be, starting salary has to be $47,500. We are proposing a salary of $50,000, which makes us competitive with our regional districts, so all of the districts in the Midlands area. And then with line 5, that is classified and compensation study. This is where we're looking to increase the salaries of all of our classified staff to ensure that we are bringing them up to a standard that is comparable with our surrounding districts, but also giving them an opportunity to have a living wage. Because right now, the wages that we pay, we have people that are making $17,000, which is what we shared with the board at the board meeting on Tuesday. So this would bring every classified person in our district up in their salary. And we would also be giving a step, as it says in number 6, for all non-teacher salary individuals, because by law, we are required to give teachers a step. This would give everyone else who is not covered by the teacher salary a step, which once again brings qualified people into our classrooms and into our buildings to do the work that we know we need to do for our students. So that takes care of safety
Mr. Chair?
and academics.
If we can go back to number 5, please, Dr. Moore. I requested a breakdown of that because that is, again, $5.1 million. And if we could just see what that looks like for the different titles, compensation, that kind of thing. I know he came in and did that study, so we should have the job descriptions and the like available. And so, like I said, I've been requesting this since September, so that we would have time to look at this, the job descriptions and the payment before, so that we could, when he came in, we would have the previous, and then we would have the new. And again, that was since September. So I'm interested in seeing, because he is saying, according to this sheet, that it's going to cost us $5.1 million to get everyone where they need to be. And we need to see what that looks like. What is the data, the data coordinator getting paid, the registrar based on their years, or however that was broke down. We didn't get, he came in with the report, but we didn't get the descriptions, and I would like to see that. So we're going to have to make some hard decisions, because not everybody is going to be able to get something. And it's clear from 10 to 32. And so, like Ms. Washington said at the last board meeting, we need to phase this in. We need to be able to phase some of this in, and make sure that next year's priority, whoever's on the list, gets it the next year, and have that a phased-in plan. I just don't want to say, okay, here's a big chunk of $5.1 million. It's for the compensation that we learned about, and we're going to pass it without looking at the individual titles and the line items and the cost and the year and the experience. So I have requested that. Do we have that today?
No, we do not have the level of detail that you're requesting. I'm going to ask Dr. Foster to address that question.
Good afternoon, Mr. Trapp and board members and Dr. Moore. Ms. McFadden, I know that you've asked for that information, and one of the things that I just want the board to understand is that this is still a work in progress. The information that the consultant provided us, just for example, was not in, it was like a whole packet of information, almost 1,000 pages of documents that he's provided us. And that is like the information. Here's the information. Now we have to go through it and prepare it for presentation to the board as well as to employees, so we can have it in a format. So example, in his work, he based every employee to have a standard reference point. He based all employees on a 245-day contract or days worked. We don't pay everybody on a 245-day contract. So for example, just to refer back to what we talked about on Tuesday, the line item that teacher assistants are paid on. Teacher's assistants will be paid on grade, will be compensated on grade 104. So the amount, so if I show you and provide you with something today that shows you that, it's going to show you as a teacher assistant working 245 days at a larger salary than what I quoted you. So we don't want to put that information out there when it's in a working document form and not in a formal format to share with the board. In addition to that, we are still working through several things that have just happened this week. Everything that we've been working on is placing everybody in a salary grade, which we don't currently have people in salary grades now. So it's placing everybody in a grade from all of the classified and administrative positions from grade 104, 103 to 136. So all of the positions that he talked about, which is almost 209 positions that we have in our district, are in a salary grade. The information that you will get once we finish it will provide you with our proposed pay plan for every position in the district. And I know that you're asking for particular positions, but we didn't look at particular positions to phase in. We looked at it as a holistic to be able to bring everybody up, because we have positions that are being compensated at levels below some of our competitors. And that was where he shared the data that we used to cross-match with other districts, as well as not just districts, but also public sector as well, or private sector as well. So we have districts and we have private sector. So once that information is shared with you, which should be hopefully by the end of May is what we're hoping, that we can get that to you so you would see what the pay plan is going to look like, that it'll be complete so that we can say, here's what everybody will be, their positions will be paid. And now what we're working on and finalizing is all of this new stuff that has come out this week with the additions of what the DOL has said that we have, the Department of Labor has stated that we must have in place for supervisors. So some of our exempt employees, when you're looking at that threshold now, which is almost $58,000, we're having to go back and look at our positions that we've placed, that he's worked with us on, and we've reached back out to him. Hey, how does this change our work that we've already put in place? Because we need to address that now too, so that it's not something that comes up later. Like, say, for example, another position that's come up in this with the new DOL requirements is our transportation supervisors. So our transportation supervisors, even in our current plan, would be compensated less than the minimum of what DOL says supervisors must be paid as. So we have to make a decision based on the information. Do we keep them at the salary that we have them at, which is less than that, and pay them overtime? Or do we make the decision now to move them to that minimum that DOL says you have to pay a supervisor, an exempt employee, to be able to be classified as exempt?
I understand that, Dr. Foster, and thank you. But my concern with that, we have no idea at all as board members what our employees are getting paid. So you're asking for $5.1 million to approve salaries and wages for people, and we have no idea what their ranking is, what they are for, because it could be that someone is a secretary and she's getting paid that $17 an hour. But she's a secretary too, been on the job for 5 or 6 years. Then you have a secretary 4 come on first year, no experience, and they're making $25,000. So those are the discrepancies that when I was requesting this, that I would like to see. And like I said, I've asked for it since September. We got the budget the last minute. At the last board meeting on Tuesday. So now we're in a crunch as board members to come up with approving a budget that we don't have any, we can't do this. I mean, we're already over budget if from number 9 from what we were presented. If we just add $23,000 more on there, which is mandated. So I'm saying that if you could get it to me, like as soon as possible, just a general idea how much these people are making and how much this $5.1 million includes. How did you come up with that number? What document was used to say this is the amount that we need?
Yes, ma'am.
If we could send it to Ms. Tanedra so she can send it to us so we can look back at that, so we can see, we may not be able to do 5.1, but we might be able to do 3.2, because there's other things in here that board members are wanting to move to the zero meal, especially like what Dr. Scott said, and there's no room for the board to say or to have input that this is what we would like to see for our other workers.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Ms. McFadden, one other thing I just want to kind of clarify, what the directive that we've had as far as with the salary study is to bring all of our positions up to be at what our consultant says is a competitive wage, because as we're defining our compensation philosophy, we cannot lead the market. We have to at least try to meet the market is what we're trying to do. We're trying to match that market. And remember, our market in Columbia is not just our surrounding school districts. It's the city of Columbia, it's the Richland County, it's the state. So we have a market that we're trying to meet. So when we're looking at where positions are going to be, I think one of the clear examples that we've tried that I've shared and I'll share again, a clear example is our instructional assistants. Our instructional assistants are, two things have happened to them in our last few years that I can account for previously too, is that they have not been given experience credit. That is addressed in here. So when you're looking at some of our teacher assistants, they came to work with us, and they received no experience credit. If I was in Richland 1, I had 10 years of experience. I come to Richland 2, I got no experience credit. So that's addressed in there to move our starting salary from $15,000, $16,000 to $25,000. So if you look at the number of instructional assistants that we have in the building, that's a chunk of money right there. And so that's how your salary studies work. That's how the classification and compensation study is working. It's placing people appropriately. So The information
Can
that we
I ask the
received.
question?
Yes, ma'am.
Can I just interrupt for a second? My question would be, Dr. Foster, Franklin, I'm sorry. Thank you for sharing that. But I guess my question would be, you've been in the HR department for these last several years. Have we not noticed that we were not paying them at the fair rate that they should have been paid over the last couple of years? And you referenced several times about the consultant this and the consultant that. Who is the consultant, and why did it take a consultant to tell us that we were not where we needed to be? I thought that's what you guys in the HR department, I thought that was part of your responsibilities to make sure that was on point.
Dr. Scott, you are correct. I have been in the department for 4 years total, and the only year that I've been able to affect change in the department is this year under Dr. Moore. I was not the
Okay,
chief
then that's enough for
officer.
me. That's enough for me. I don't want, because I don't want, anything else shared.
Okay.
Okay, now understand. Thank you. I
And-
appreciate that.
And can I just add, what is different about this year versus previous years is in the past, the district may have come and said, we want to give a 3% raise across the board to everyone, which would have raised people's salaries. The difference is here, we are trying to bring people up to where they should be. So it's not as clear cut that everyone would get 3%. Somebody may get 3%, someone else may be getting 6%. But we haven't worked through those details yet. And the reason for the study was, and it was initiated prior to me coming on board. So I do believe previous administration was trying to move this work forward because it was started. But we are now getting to the point where we are ready to implement. So the difference in the 5.1 is a set number versus in the a flexible number, meaning flexible for the different employees under different categories, versus coming in and just saying 2% across the board.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Ms. Nash.
I think, and this may be what I think my board members are saying is, I'm a business owner, and if somebody hands me a receipt and only at the bottom of it is a number, I can't reverse engineer that number to make sense, because there may be something that I can't afford to pay. And so for me, it's really hard I agree with my colleagues on this. It's really hard for me to figure out what 5.1 is. And I've seen salary studies done. I've actually even been a part of them and implementing them at one point in my life. But I do feel that just even a generalization of some sort would definitely help us, even if it's this percentage of people have already received raises. We don't anticipate this percentage having raises because they've been already given raises, way more than maybe other people have, just because things like that happen. But for me, it is really hard as somebody who looks at numbers all the time, that is my job, and making sure that I stay on budget. And I think it's the same way for households, is if you know that your budget has shifted for groceries and somebody says, oh yeah, here's $100 and we're just gonna go get groceries, but we don't know anything. We don't know if we're covering the things that we need to cover. We have no clue. And I just can't reverse engineer $5.1 million and not knowing if specifically, what are the percentages of people that we're giving money to that are that maybe have already are receiving raises that may have not received raises. That's a little bit something more that I could digest. I'm not even talking about super granular, but the percentage of that. What is the percentage of our staff that covers that 5.1 to give raises to? Even a percentage would help me significantly, I'll be honest.
Ms. Nash, and we can provide you with that information. This is a moving target. I mean, this has been a task that we didn't hire, so we hired a consultant to handle it, and they get to a certain point, and then they turn it over to the district. So we're in the midst of our daily work, as well as trying to find making the time to complete the things that are required for this. And we set aside time each week so that we're working on this major task. It's a team of us. It's not just me. It's a team of us. And we've had the opportunity to speak to pretty much every supervisor about their staff. So it's been days and hours of work. And I do agree with you. I don't want you to approve something and not have the full picture of it. But I assure you that the work that our consultant has provided us is solid work. And we'll get you the information that you're needing. We are just so far behind in some of our salaries, particularly with instructional assistants. I keep coming back to that. We are so far behind with their pay because we have been not using fair practices when we're compensating them. That position in itself would be one that's going to cost the district a significant amount of money to get them where they need to be. So as you're thinking about categories, that's one category, and that's why when we place the salary, when you're looking at the things that Dr. Campbell talked to you about when he came, we're not treating all positions the same. So from 104 to like 116, that is a different category of employee. That's the ones who have not been compensated completely the way that they should have been based on years of experience or the varying ways that we've compensated them. And then you get to 117 and on, that's your administrative group, and so they will be seeing less compensation there because some of them are already compensated at levels comparable to other districts. But we have really focused heavy on the areas where we have not had consistent placement of staff. For example, nurses are placed one way, social workers are placed another way, instructional assistants are placed on a salary scale grade one way. So that's where we are spent a lot of our time trying to address that, as those are areas that I've observed for the last 3 years since I've been here that needed to be corrected. Now we're working hard to correct those. So we will get you that information, and we'll get you the complete packet so you can see what our proposed pay plan is for everyone. But we didn't get the information in a presentable manner. And if I was to present with you today, it would show things that people may view and say, oh, I'm going to be getting paid this, but it's based on a 245-day employee, and they're only a 185 employee.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Ms. Nash.
Would it be feasible to ask for, say, like just the areas that you guys are talking about that would be affected by this? Would that be feasible? Would that be feasible to ask if it was just like you were saying, like the instructionalists, like something like that? Is that easier to do? Because I guess part of the thing is, and I want to say thank you guys for all your hard work. Please understand that we know that what you're facing is a difficult task, but for us, this money isn't our money. This money that and when asking for a millage belongs to the taxpayer, and they want an account. So we all are under that pressure because we want to make sure that we get it right for everybody. So I don't want you guys to feel, and I don't think anybody on the board wants you to feel that like we're scrutinizing you guys, but we have to get really, really clear on what it is for us that we're voting on, because that affects those people in a recession if we're talking about adding more money. And I think we all know it because we're all feeling it. But yeah, if that is feasible, I don't know, Dr. Moore, if you.
So, Dr. Foster, would it be fair to say that all classified staff would have a level of increase in their salary? Classified staff?
Dr. Moore, I don't want to say all classified staff members.
Good.
What I want to say is that what we have decided, what our directive was, I think our directive was to make sure that we know that we're trying to match the market. So where we have positions, particularly relating back to the instructional assistants, special education assistants, that is a area that has been hit, that has not been treated fairly in our district. And that is one of the highest grossing areas that's going to cost us in implementing the salary study. It's that area, as well as our secretarial staff, administrative support area. Those two areas are heavy in that because they haven't been compensated correctly or appropriately over the last few years. So that will be where we will see a lot of the increases. But I want you to understand that most of the increases will come from the people who have been with us for 0 to 5 years, because they came in, because we have a cap that we place employees on, so they come in from 0 to 5, and they can't, their salaries have not been higher than step 5, so that step 5 may not be at the market. So they're going to come in and they're going to see a large increase because they've been here for a certain period of time. And just like with instructional assistants, you know, somebody who just started with us this year, I'll give that as an example, started with us this year, and they had 10 years of it, they had any experience or no experience, they would have started at step 0. Well, the new salary schedule for that is going to increase from $16,000 to $25,000. So that employee will experience a significant increase in their salary. But then let's go to someone who has been with us for 20 years. They will see an increase because the amount went from 16 to 25, but they may not see a significant increase as the person who's been here, 0 to 5 years. So I don't want to say everybody's going to receive the same percentage, because that's not going to be true. And we will be notifying employees once we finish all the work, because that will be our job, is to notify all employees that, based on our new salary schedules, here's your placement on it. You were here on our previous schedule, and on our new schedule, you will be on this salary. This will be your salary grade, and this will be your step, and here will be your salary. So everybody will not receive the same equivalent increase in the salaries review. So I don't want people to think that everybody's going to receive the significant increase that I just outlined for that instructional assistant, because that is one area, but other areas may not have been impacted like that.
Mr. Chairman, just one more question at the moment. So is it possible to get even just the category so we know? If there was how you guys did this 1 through 9 and then went down these are the top priorities. Is there a way to do that with the items and amounts?
What I think our request would be is that if we had today, we have all next week set aside for us to finish the important work, which is finalizing the pay plan. And that's where we're at now. If we can get the pay plan developed, I can share the pay plan with you, which would be something that we would be sharing out anyway, that it will help you understand how those areas are going to be compensated, because that's what you don't have. We talk about 101 to 136, but you don't know where is everybody at in that position. The only thing I can tell you that's solid in there is our lower level positions, which are our instructional assistants, all the way down are at 104. Dr. Franklin is at the last, because it goes from the lowest positions to the highest level position, and everything else is placed in between those categories. So we will get you that, and that will have all of the positions as to where they're placed on there. But also, you asked about job descriptions. We can't really finalize all the job descriptions. We have over 200 plus positions. That's just over 200 plus positions. And we are working to finalize all job descriptions, because we got to have job descriptions for all these positions, so that when we share the new compensation with employees, we can say, attached is your new job descriptions. Our job descriptions have not been revised in a number of years, and they have not been revised or reviewed by a professional. They've just been taken care of by us in our department, and we know that we did not have someone who was whose responsibility was that it was my responsibility or somebody else's responsibility, or supervisors providing us with those job descriptions. So now they've been done by a professional, and we're having to send back for things that we're having to reclassify. So it is a lot of work, but I want to assure Dr. Moore that we have a deep understanding and passion to correct this and make it right for our district, because it will help us be more competitive. And it will help us explain to employees how they're paid. You don't know how many people come to me and say, please explain to me how I'm paid. And we have to sit there and say, well, let me go back and look at all of this years of data to figure that out. but we will have clarity in how people are paid, and we can move forward with that and share it out with our employees so that our employees will see, oh, I see how I'm being paid and compensated and how my job compares to others in the district.
Mr. Chair?
Ms. McFadden?
Can we go ahead and, thank you, Dr. Franklin. I'm sorry, I kept calling you by the wrong one, but thank you so much, and I appreciate that, and I do understand what you're saying about the 5.1 and trying to break that down. But, Mr. Chair, can we go to do number 1 through 9 and see if we can't get everything we have to have paid done, like the contracts and stuff like that, and then we can go back and try to figure out what we want to do for the 10 through 32.
Tell you what, we could do that. Why don't we finish our questions on here, and then we can go back and do that? Because that might, our questions may answer some of what you're.
Which I think, and Ms. Washington, you're on the line, so just let me know if I get this right. But the next question was, is there plans to evaluate personnel departments to see what's working and what's not working and begin reorganizing and trimming the fat? And I imagine that means all the way around, whether that's like curriculum that may be working or, is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
So we are looking at contracting with a program evaluator to come in and do that assessment for us.
Okay. And then
Thank
number.
you. And Mrs. Nash? Oh, yes, thank you, Dr. Moore. And for the sake of time, because I see all of my questions on there, and they were just submitted yesterday at 5 o'clock. And I'm sure that nobody may have had enough time to get some of those answers. You can skip through mine, and I can set up a time to get my questions answered individually. I don't want my questions to hijack the meeting today.
Oh, no worries. And then we can also do them based on number, because I think like when we get to section 24 and 25, I can go back up to 24 and 25, if that's okay with you. And then line 15, we can discuss when we get to the next ones. And so I'll just go through the ones that are in those sections. I can kind of like flip through here and see those, and then we can answer them by line item, because that'll all be within that as well. So that's what I'll do then.
And can I add something?
Sure.
I heard what Ms. Washington said, but that's the purpose of this meeting, to be able to hear what questions a person has and to hear the answers. So if we do that, I hope that the questions as well as answers are submitted to all of us, so we'll know what the questions were and the answers that they provided.
I think we can get through them. I'll go through by the lines. So since we're up to, we talked about 1 through 9, does anybody, let me go through really quick, I'm going to make sure. Okay, number 9. Okay, so Ms. McFadden, we had number 5, and we talked about that one. So number 9, I'm going to go to Ms. McFadden's question here, and that is number 9, ESSER funds, funded positions, title school, and compensation. And you had a question about that, Ms. McFadden?
Yeah, that's the same as basically breaking down the number 5. It's kind of the same kind of question, so that we'd know of those 31, the same questions. How are they broke up? Do they include those that are in number 5? Number 11 on the page, it's also a number 9. It's kind of like the same thing. And then on down the page with instructional teacher support, number 13, does that include 9 and 5 as well? Those kind of information. And I think that you're supposed to get back with us on that. And it kind of looks confused. So what I'm saying is on that one is number 9 is like the breakdown of number 5 is what I'm asking for. And then also number 11 and number 13, they're kind of, do those instructional support teachers, are they included in those numbers of $5.1 million? Number 9, are they included in that $5.1 million? Because those are contracted, or those are certified positions as well. So I was just wondering, are they included in that 5.1 million in number 5, or is it separate?
So you want me to answer that one for you? You can answer the first part. Okay. Okay, so they would not be included in there because remember, those are positions that have been paid out of another funding source, which is ESSER. So they would be basically new positions that will be coming to the general fund. And Mr. Stephen can talk a little bit more about that, but those would be positions that would be coming to the general fund. But as far as where their compensation would be, it would be based on the new proposed pay plans salary schedules that we're putting in place, that would be how we would base their salaries. Stephen?
Thank you, Franklin. And I can answer the second part of that question. Thanks to Kay, and I forgot to introduce Kay earlier on. Kay Mays, our Director of Accounting and Finance, and she's my left-hand person today here. So we have in ESSER currently that we wanted to bring over to general fund and have those funded out of general fund. We have, is that 7 or 9?
It's 7 teachers.
Okay. 7 teachers, 2 social workers, 2 attendance interventionists, 9 health aides, 4 special ed aides, and 7 interventionists. That makes it the 31. And those are academic interventionists. That's correct.
Okay. We will go back to number, let's see here what I go up to. There was one that I also had the same question. Okay, so number 2, how are veteran teachers impacted by the changes in the 0 mil increase? Starting teachers are getting $50,000 and sign-on bonuses.
So the veteran teachers would be included in the teacher salary schedule. But if they're veterans, they would not receive the sign-on bonuses.
Okay.
Can I clarify that question? So what I'm saying is our teachers are going to be coming in at $50,000. We've had teachers that have been in our district for 23, 24, 25 years. That band was only a jump of $600. So they were in one band. I'm just using $600 as a number. So that one band might have been, for the next 4 years, they're just getting an increase in their salary in $600. I understand we're going to unban them, which is exciting, but are they going to still get higher amounts at each band, or is it going to be $600 over the next 4 years from 23 to 28? Is that what we're saying? Like, what does that look like? And then are we going to be putting in some kind of plan to be able to retain them? Whether we're still going to continue with incentives to retain them. And that's what my question is.
You want to answer the first part of that? Or?
Ms. Washington, thank you for that question. So with our new salary schedule that we're proposing for teachers, as Ms. Williams shared on Tuesday night, we are going to we're going to decrease the steps from 45 to 35. And then, of course, we're not going to ban the steps anymore. So teachers will be compensated for 0 to 35 years. And so when you're adding starting salary at $50,000, and Stephen would have to answer the question as far as what are the steps, the percentage of the steps between each step, but they would receive they will fare better than they are currently, because our current salary schedule, even though it's at 45 steps, is still not competitive with other districts. So when you're looking at other districts that are at 40 or at 33, we decided to go with 35, and that range, once that salary schedule is finalized, then it will benefit our teachers at the beginning and at the end. And then, of course, we'll still have to have some discussions about some of our teachers in the middle on how we're going to make sure that they're competitive. And then we're still working on what we're going to be doing, and that will be outside of our conversation for the budget, because I don't think there's anything in the budget for incentives or bonuses outside of the signing bonuses that we currently offer for teachers as well as for classified staff.
And I know Nancy will probably have a little bit of clarification on the scale, but she mentioned the other night in the first reading that this would be like a 2-tiered process. And correct me if I'm wrong, Nancy, but what we have done this year is we have unbanded and reduced the number of years, so that causes the steps to be closer together this year, but there will be no more bands. But next year, as the 2-tiered process will be next year, we will expand those steps back out to where they are a little bit larger. So that's a two-tiered process. Is that a correct statement, Nancy?
That is, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, yes, that's correct. Every teacher, including the veteran teachers, will definitely see an increase. Some of them a very sizable increase this year. And they will continue to see an increase as we go forward. However, as I said on, Tuesday night, the thought process is to make this a 2-year process. And next year, we will focus more on even expanding the steps. Right now, in our current salary schedule, we don't have, like some districts may say, oh, every step is a 2% step. No, that's not the case in Richland too. And we're continuing our work on that. And so next year, that's what we will focus more on, is expanding and trying to get some more consistency between the steps.
Thank you so much, because that has just been an ongoing conversation with not just our veteran teachers that are nearing retirement, but even the teachers in the middle, just making sure that we have equitable compensation practices from the beginning to the end. So thank you very much. And I appreciate that you said that it is going to be a continuous conversation in a 2-year process. So thank you, Nancy.
Okay, and now we're going to move to between sections 10 and 23, those next lines, if that's okay with everybody. So line 10, and this is actually a cross question, meaning there's more than one person, and it's about multilingual learners. How much of that population, what is the increase in growth as far as like percentage-wise, or how much growth did we see there year over year?
The amount of growth that we've seen in that area this year is 166 students. We started on September the 8th with 1,849 students, and as of today, we are at 2,015. So we've seen a growth of this year 166 students.
Okay, and then line 11, this is also one I had, and Ms. Washington has it as well, and special needs support for our teachers and instructional assistants. That seems like a higher up there, like a 1 through 9, or I guess we're 1 through 10 now. It seems like a higher priority. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Good afternoon. The increase in special education has been very significant. Since the pandemic, we have grown by a little over 400 students. We specifically grew this past school year from October of 22 to October of 23 by over 200 students. In Richland, too, we have over 3,200 students that have IEPs, and right at about 1,100 that we serve with 504s. So right now we're about 16% of our students are students with disabilities, which is a little bit above the national average, but we have a team that monitors to ensure that we are not over-identifying students, and the State Department also monitors that. But we're in alignment with where a lot of school districts are nationally.
So, so I guess my thought is hearing that, and then there's also a possibility of more. I think that probably what Ms. Washington and myself, and maybe even other colleagues are thinking, is that just seems like a high priority for me, for sure. And just even hearing that, even just forecasting, that seems like that's going to be a higher priority. And that's really my only statement on that.
Can I add something to that, Ms. Nash? That's part of compensation, because we could move that up, but if we're not paying competitive salaries, then we won't be able to attract the people that we need to be in those classrooms. And I'll give you an example. One of the school districts offered a $15,000 bonus for special education teachers. I spoke with that superintendent yesterday, and they have recruited teachers for the $15,000. Now, how long those teachers will stay with them, I don't know, but that bonus has worked out for them. So while we cannot offer a $15,000 bonus, having a competitive salary will help us within the region, the Midlands, to attract the talent to be in the classrooms.
So with that compensation study, are we saying that 5.1, if we were to do the compensations, what is there saying the 5.1, would they be included in that?
The teachers would be included in the teacher salary, but the TAs, this would be as a part of that compensation in number 5.
And just to piggyback on that, what Dr. Moore is saying about the teaching assistants, that has been a significant challenge for us this year. Dr. Foster and now working with Dr. Adams, they've been diligently working with us to fill those, but those have been very hard to fill, which has been a strain on our teaching staff. So that compensation, as Dr. Foster has shared, is critical so that we can have qualified people that we can put in the classroom, that we can train to work with students with disabilities. Yes, sir.
Are these special ed support that are paid out of IDEA, or are they paid out of general fund?
These will specifically be those that are paid out of the general fund. That would be both line item 11 and the ones that are currently in ESSER. The ones that were in ESSER were put there because those were, that was growth that happened after the district did the budget. And we had significant growth in our preschool age students that we have to place that are coming out of BabyNet.
Okay, so we'll go on. Did any board members that are on the phone, do you guys have any questions or comments or thoughts? Okay, we'll go on to line number 13. Are there 2 instructional coaches that can receive a stipend or make that their sole job to focus on international teachers, new teachers, and alternative certified teachers?
So this was a collaborative request between HR and academics because we're continuing to see a growing number of new teachers. And of course, when we're looking at the growing number of new teachers, they're not coming just with a traditional education background. They're coming with an alternative certification pathway. This year we had 214 new teachers that our instructional coaches work with. And so our request is to take, we have 4 coaches, one for math, science, social studies, and ELA that are part-time. What now? Middle and high for those content areas that are part-time. Our request is to make those positions full-time because we know that we're going to have an increase in new teachers. We're going to have an increase in alternatively certified teachers. And if we're looking at the direction that the state is going with what they're proposing at the House that passed yesterday, that's moving from House to moving to the House floor for discussion, which is the request that superintendent support, is adding non-certified teachers to help us with the teacher shortage. We're going to continue to see an increase of teachers that are going to need additional support. So the request is to make those full-time because we need that support. That's one of the things that we're hearing from our teachers is that they don't feel like they have enough support, particularly at the early stages of their career, and this is part of our support mechanism for them, is that they have a assigned coach that works with them. And this year, our coaches were working with about 30 teachers each, and of course they try to spend a significant amount of time with them to help them learn and support them in their first year journey. And our goal is to try to retain them, and that's where that support is coming from. It's a tremendous need for our new teachers as well as our alternatively certified teachers.
Ms. Nash, Chairwoman Nash.
Oh, sure. Oh, Vice Chair, but yeah.
Vice Chair. Thank you, Dr. Foster, for explaining that, because that makes perfect sense. And I, being an instructional coach myself, in my previous position, I understand the need for the support for our new teachers. So thank you for the thorough explanation.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this one is across the board. I think we have like several board members, one, I myself is included, and this is just where we're talking about hearing officers. So I'm going to go and, let me get the emails. Okay. How many cases do each hearing officer conduct daily, weekly, and weekly?
I don't have the weekly number off the top of my head, but I can say that on each day, with the 2 part-time hearing officers, each of them hold roughly 4 to 5 hearings a day, as well as our director of people services holds about 5 or 6 hearings a day. That is when we are at our steady peak, which we are at now. So, and our part-time hearing officers, one of them works 2 days a week, and the other one works 4 days a week.
Okay. And then how often do hearing officers meet with you, Mr. Smith, and Dr. Burkett? Dr. Burkett?
They meet with Dr. Burkett. They're in the same area, so they really meet daily when they have questions and all, and I'm in the building with them, so if any questions arise, they meet with me also.
Okay. I think that answered one of the questions. And then are hearings still being done face-to-face and virtually, with parents having an option and not being told which one they have to be assigned, or do they, or is it just in person now?
They are being held both ways. Our parents are offered the opportunity. Well, the default way is face-to-face. But if a parent wants to go ahead and have a virtual one, they can notify the office in regards to that, and we do both of them. Matter of fact, daily, they do both face-to-face and virtual.
Okay, and then what does it look like for like a typical day for a hearing officer, just so we I think everybody wants to kind of get an understanding of that.
Okay, hearings usually start at 9:15, and they can run all the way till 3:30. But part of the day, everything is not a hearing. Hearings run approximately 45 minutes, but in addition to that, let's say that you have a hearing scheduled and it's a no-show. Even though it's a no-show, you won't know that until the time of the hearing, and you still have prepared for the hearing and all. And prior to hearings, you have to prepare, as well as after hearings, because you have to have the notification to the parents with the decision as well, and contact them in regards to that. Also work with the professional office professionals to go ahead and make sure we get the letters out and schedule them appropriately for like intake if we're going to alternative school, probation coming in to do that, and probation is part of what goes on during the day also.
Can I add something to that,
Sure.
Ms. Nash, if you don't mind?
Absolutely.
And I do, because I'm thankful for some of those questions, because I know early on we had some concerns about when parents don't show up, that they were going ahead with the hearings in the absence of the parents and the students. So I'm glad to hear that that's not occurring. And the other thing, and I know I addressed this before, and I think it has been resolved, when we were just sending notes or letters to parents saying you're scheduled for a virtual and not giving them the option. So I'm glad to hear that we are giving parents an option and not just assigning them to a virtual or assigning them to face-to-face. So thank you for that.
Okay, and then has administration ensured that the department has operating procedures for this department for hearing officers?
Yes, ma'am. We follow as well. Well, we follow the state statute. State statute dictates how we're supposed to conduct hearings, the number of days that a hearing should take place in, a number of days that the decision is rendered. So we do follow state statute.
Okay, and this is,
Another thing, I think I missed something. what was the answer to how many hearings per day that hearing officers conduct on a regular day? How many per hearing officer?
We have two part-time hearing officers. One works 4 days a week. They conduct around 5 to 6 hearings a day. And then we have another part-time hearing officer that works 4 days a week, and it's the same amount, as well as our director who holds hearings, and she can have up to 4 to 6 a day as well.
And then do you guys have a break in between those? Is there like a break that you all get, or like, you know what I mean? Like if there's like, or is it just like straight 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
No, we have hearings designated for the morning, and we also have hearings designated in the afternoons.
So for clarity, we're saying that for clarity with 3 or 4 hearing officers, we're getting through a possible 10 to 12 hearings every single day. Am I hearing that correctly?
We can have up till, with the 3, yes, we can easily have up to 10 a day.
Okay, and is there like a schedule that you guys keep of hearings, like some type of agenda of how many hearings you've had each day and each month?
Hearings are scheduled, we have a calendar for our hearings, so yes, they're scheduled on a calendar.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then let's see here. Let's go to line 19. Can you guys let us know or give us some insight on what is the increase needed for? What are these? It's the to support virtual instruction. Can you break that down for us, like what that looks like?
So, Ms. Nash, this year we've had to use virtual teachers to provide some instruction for some of our middle and high school classrooms. And of course, part of the agreement to try to make that a successful experience for our students and as effective as possible, we've had virtual facilitators in there. Those virtual facilitators currently this year have been paid out of ESSER funds. And so in order for us, looking at the number of vacancies that we currently have and the needs that we currently have, the request is to be able to have 29 virtual facilitators that we have to pick up in general fund to be able to provide that same level of coverage. So our request is to move those, basically moving those, we have to move those from ESSER fund to general fund, but the need is, as of right now, is going to be there for us to have those instructional facilitators to support instruction with virtual instruction that may be needed at the middle and high schools.
And this is, and I'm not worked in education, so I don't know, but this comes up a lot when we have hearings for discipline. And one of the things we talked about was if virtual school was an option, and would this virtual school be, like them going from that, would that be able to support that or no?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
This request is to cover general education classes. So one of the methods that we've used to try to fill the gap from not having a in-person certified teacher is to use a virtual certified teacher. And so in order to try to help to manage the students in the classroom, we've had to hire facilitators. And so that's where that request is coming from. The teacher will be providing virtual instruction, and then the instructional facilitator would be in the class with the students.
And then we'll go down now to, let's see here. Let me go check a couple more. Let me look at it. See where they all are together. Let's see. Okay. Let's see here. Let's go to line 21. Okay. Ms. Porter would like to see 2 certified interventionists prioritized before we address line 21. Is there a reason that you guys put 21 before 22? Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. We address 21. Sorry, I would like to see 2 certified interventionists before we address line 21. Sorry about that. Yeah. So is there a reason the interventionists were not before line 21? Which is upgrading the lead teacher position at CFK and CFKN to APs.
Which interventionist?
Yeah,
Which line?
there she is, Ms. Porter's on. She can speak to that.
Okay.
Right.
I was under the impression, based on comments that we had during our budget hearing, and then after I further looked into it, that we do not have a certified interventionist at our centers to be the person who is over the like the RTI and the intervention that takes place when that happens, and to oversee the IEPs and so forth within the centers. And so in my opinion, that's something that directly serves our students. Could we not prioritize that before looking for something where we've had lead teachers over centers for a while? Although I do think it's important to ensure that we have an AP and an administrator, I just would love to see us prioritize that certified interventionist who conducts IEPs in those areas first. Because the reading coach who's hired, who we get funded by the state to be there, is also comes with a laundry list of things that they're not supposed to do, which includes things that what anybody else would think is they should be able to do, like be the interventionist and help with students, but the state says that they cannot conduct those duties. So do we not have an interventionist that can serve our students within our centers?
So your request, Ms. Porter, would be to add that, and to put it prior to an AP, but you would be looking for the board to add that to the list of requests. Okay.
All right, Ms.
If
Porter?
it's not already, yes, if it's not already in your plan, because I'm not sure if that was something you were going to do already or not.
It's not there. So you're asking to add that, right?
Yes.
Okay, so like line 20, or make that 21 and then go down further. Yeah.
Well, I would want to, yes, make that 21, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And then also, I wasn't sure if that was included in the special education support line, because it could have been. I don't know where that money comes from.
Correct, Ms. Davis or Ms. Gregory to address that. But the question is, the interventionist, is that included already in special education or in the academic interventionist, or in either area?
Be in special education, I think that's, the interventionist would be a standalone. It's not included in the special education.
We had the academic interventionists that we're paying for out of ESSER in number 9. Just want to get clarity to make sure that it's not one of those areas that's already been cited, and therefore it'd be an addition.
Yeah, I think they're separate.
It would be an addition. It's not included. The interventionists for CFK and CFK North are not included in the ESSER funded positions. We had a separate budget request for that. And then also, I believe the schools could decide if they wanted to do it in number 26.
And then we would not just need one interventionist, because we have 4 centers. So I don't know if it would be feasible to have one share for CFK and one shared for CFA and CFI, but there's 4 centers. I would think that all centers would need to have somebody that could serve students should they come in on scale or on track in kindergarten, but they develop needs in 3rd and 4th. Who's going to service them? or
And I
provide those
guess,
services.
and I guess for me, I did have a follow-up question to that because I saw that line 25 talked about the inequity, so I thought that that would be addressed in that line. And is this only for certain staff in certain schools? But I'll wait till you get there. Because if we're talking about inequities, if we have interventionists at schools, I absolutely agree. But that was my question: is some of the centers going? Is it addressed in line 25 where it says FTEs to address inequities in school staff? So
Line 25 is a whole nother ball of wax that Dr. Foster can address when we get to that section. That one isn't just instructional positions, that one also includes some classified positions.
Okay, well, we'll give him a little bit of time. Do we need a 5-minute break? Yeah, it's up to you, Chair.
Oh, I'm fine. No, I mean, we need it.
For the rest, yeah,
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break. We'll be back and we will reconvene at 2:53. All right, we are back in session, and we will continue with our questions. Ms. Nash, do you have the next question available?
I do, finishing my chip. Sorry. Okay, so the next question.
Wait,
Oh,
Ms. Nash,
sorry.
before you go on with the questions, I have a question. I would like to know, why are these questions published by board members' name and on the document? If someone can answer that for me.
We're not sure. I'm not sure. Hold on a second.
The questions were just collected by Ms. Washington per the board members that submitted them, and that's the way they were placed on the document.
Right, but I guess when I'm thinking about board superintendent relationships and transparency, I get all of that. But I just think that it should not have been published by board members' name and submitted. It should have been collectively submitted as just questions in general. So I think moving in the future, when we're talking about maintaining positive relationships and working together, let's just show a little more respect without publishing board members' questions and placing it in a document. I just think that's distasteful, and that's my opinion. But let me just say this, not that I have a problem, because I don't have a problem with my questions being shared, because I would ask my questions. But I just think that was a little distasteful in my opinion. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Elkin-Scott.
Okay, and then we're going to go on to line number, let's see here, 24. So we just approved the 8% bond, and the question is, why is that not a part of the capital improvements list instead of the $400,000 for the district Peterson Church project? It's, sorry, line 24. Yeah, why, because why is that not a part of capital improvements is the question.
Kelly, if you would answer number 24. Is this a stormwater? It's
Yeah.
not Peterson project.
Yeah, they were, the question is, so because the stormwater, is that part of the, why wasn't that part of the 8% bond? And instead, and it's not a part of the capital improvements, on the capital improvements list, instead of having the Peterson project on there, like couldn't stormwater be in place of the Peterson project?
Ms. Nash, I'm not sure what the Peters project is,
Okay.
but the stormwater infrastructure, that is something that we have to maintain on a yearly basis. As it stands now, that 500,000 is because we have not been maintaining that in a sense. So this here is to get us where we are proactive. Because right now, everything we're doing is reactive, and without this here being, and this is somewhat mandated, that we have to maintain retention and detention ponds. So without doing that, the risk behind that is everything comes back towards the school, and we're having like sinkholes, driveways caving in. So this right here in itself is a standalone that
Okay.
should be yearly.
So it wouldn't be a part of the 8%?
No, ma'am, it would
Okay.
not.
Is this mandatory, did you say?
Yes, ma'am.
So this would need to go up in the 1 through 9 category?
Yes, because this is something that's got to happen. But once again, that $500,000, that budget would not be that significant. It's to get us caught up to where we should be. And once we get into the regular maintenance of that, that number decreases significantly.
So, to add to that, Kelly, and correct me if I'm wrong, but part of the maintenance of that, there were some unexpected expenses with, I think you mentioned the sinkholes and stormwater problems. And most of this is due to just the improper maintenance of our stormwater system. is basically and primarily the detention and the retention ponds. So the district has at least one pond or underground system at every school, and most schools have multiple ponds. So as Kelly mentioned, this is the larger amount in the budget is to catch us up on the maintenance that needs to be taken care of on an annual basis. So that's the reason it's where it is item number 24 at this point in time. So it's more of it's a larger amount. Is that a correct statement?
Correct. And for an example, I'll use Dent Middle School. When we had that flood in 2015, with that major flood we had, we didn't go back and do any type of assessment. So when all that water, and not to insult anyone's intelligence, but a detention pond, retention pond, one is to hold water, one is to hold it and let it go out. What's happening is when all that water comes back into the facility, it changes the piping and everything. So once that happens, now we're having sinkholes and all that stuff on the grounds, and that risk becomes very bad from that standpoint. So with all that being said, because we don't have that infrastructure to maintain, it's costing us on the backside. And my thing is, if we can get out in front of that, then these other costs that we're having to pop up on an emergency basis, we can identify this here. But right now, we're having money that we're planning to do something else with, and oh, by the way, when I gotta go see Will, we got an issue at a school, that's $70,000 to make that repair on the playground. But if we would have gotten ahead of this stormwater infrastructure, then we wouldn't have to deal with that right now, because that would have potentially got caught when we were doing the maintenance.
Okay, let me ask you a quick question.
Yes, sir.
I want to make sure I'm following. So basically what it sounds like is a lot of our retention ponds are full of sediment, and is this money to clean them out so that they function at 100% capacity, basically?
Correct, sir.
Okay. So, and that'll help us prevent, that'll allow them to function, therefore there won't be other problems, like you said, with the water backing up and causing issues on the property
Correct.
where we don't.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is to clean them up and get them to where they function at 100% efficiency.
Correct.
And right now, we have less than 100% efficiency.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And so in the future, they will be maintained properly
Right.
at lesser cost. Is that correct?
Okay.
Okay, let's see, our next line is, let me go through, 1 second. Okay. For number 25, FTEs and inequities in our school staff, which schools are affected by this, if you guys can speak to that?
I'm not sure.
Or even how many?
Franklin can probably elaborate, but I guess any school with a teacher shortage probably, or a staff shortage, is that more accurate?
I'll take care of it. So this has been some of our work in the salary study, that we have determined that some schools are not, their staffing in their office does not match our staffing guidelines. So for example, if we go to the elementary school, typically in an elementary school, you have 3 people there that are doing, as we've described, multiple jobs. So we have an administrative assistant / bookkeeper, we have the SDC / register, and then we have the attendants / receptionist. So we're looking at wanting to make sure that all of those schools have an equitable amount there, and that would be like trying to divide the attendance secretary and having a receptionist there, because it's hard to really develop the functions for a position when it's got shared responsibility. So if you have one elementary school that has 4 people there, and they have different functions, and then you have the others have 3 people there, we don't want to have combined job descriptions. So our goal is, like for elementary, is to be able to clean up and address them so that they have 4 people in their front offices, so that they would have whatever we decide to reclassify, the administrative / bookkeeper position, they would have the SDC and register position, and then they would have a person that would handle student attendance, and then they would have a person who would be the the receptionist or office assistant, so that's how that's cleaning up. And then it gets a little bit more challenging at the middle and high school level because their staffing is so diverse right now. It's not really consistent. So we're trying to make sure that we get theirs taken care of too, so they have consistency in their placements there. So a lot of that is that cleaning up of those positions so that we can make sure that in our work in the salary classification and salary study that we have consistent job descriptions and positions at the middle and high. And this was determined as we were going through and having conversations with schools where there's just a lot of different positions and not the consistent positions at each school. So we want to make sure that each school has a consistent office administrative support is where that line item's coming from.
Okay.
And Dr. Foster, may I?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Nancy. Sorry about that.
Just to provide a little bit more detail, so that would equate to four positions at the a total of 4 positions at the middle school level, 12 positions at the elementary level, and 5 at the high school level.
Yes.
That's what I was looking for. Perfect. Thank you.
Ms. Nash?
Uh-huh.
I have another follow-up question.
Sure.
So for the elementary schools, we're talking about a lot, adding positions in various places. Will any of these positions be able to assist with the unencumbered time at the elementary level? Because I know that was a mandate, and we know that mandates come and they don't come with funds. But I just want to make sure, because it's not being done in every school, and it's not, and where it's being done, it's not always unencumbered. And so I absolutely understand that, everybody's stretched thin, but I want to make sure that if that's something that we are promising teachers because of a bill, that if we're adding some of these positions to schools and we're looking, are we going to make sure that we address the unencumbered time with our elementary teachers and our special education teachers?
Ms. Washington, if there are some areas that we need to, I know we did last year at the request of Ms. Footman, I know we added some positions last year to cover some of those concerns. And if there are some continued concerns that we need to address, then we have to take care of those so that the schools are providing that unencumbered time for the schools. So that could be addressed either in that item, if there's a possibility, Ms. Williams, and then it could also be addressed in the additional learning support if they needed some assistance there too. Is that correct, Ms. Williams, or would you recommend that?
Yes, sir, that is a possibility.
But we would need to know what schools are still having challenges fully implementing the unencumbered time.
And that's where we have to create a safe space where teachers feel like if that is happening, that they can share that information and not feel like they're going to be punished or they're going to be challenged. But that is one of the things that I continue to hear from elementary teachers is that they are not. They're walking kids to lunch. They're only getting 10 minutes. When you walk from your classroom, drop them off at the cafeteria, and by the time you come back, that's only 10 minutes. And the level of stress that they are experiencing at every level, new, middle, and veteran. So I just want to make sure that we're talking about all these positions, that we're paying attention, and they honestly shouldn't have to come and report. I just want, if we're looking at schedules and we've got people monitoring various things, there should be some level of accountability to make sure that it is happening.
Yes, ma'am, we will look into that with the schools.
Okay, and we're going to go on to line number.
Ms. Nash,
Sorry, go ahead.
So just to be clear, number 25, that could actually take care of some of those concerns that Dr. Scott had, or Dr. Elkin Scott had at our last board meeting, correct? So that would cover that. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am, that will take care of that as well.
So this one is number 30, and we've got a couple of questions around this, so I will just make it into one. How does the assistant athletic trainer affect our athletics department, and like what does that look like on a day-to-day for the athletic trainer?
Okay, so I'll start, and then Mr. Smith will kind of fill in, because I'm not the athletic person. He takes care of athletics. We've just been helping them with their restructuring there. So what the request is for, it's to hopefully align us with the other high schools in the area. But it's my understanding that our student athletes, due to the increased number in our student athletes, as well as the number of sports that we have, summer, winter, and spring, well, fall, winter, and spring, the need for additional support there. So what the request is to take our current athletic trainers that we have at each school and to make their sole responsibilities just athletic trainer with no teaching responsibilities, so that they can see the athletes throughout the day as well as during doing practice and games. And then the assistant athletic trainer would be the one that they would provide the instruction for sports medicine 1 and 2, and then they would also assist in the after school with training the athletes and supporting the athletes. And so that would give them 2 people on campus. So right now what we're doing is we have one person who's teaching the class, and then they're also providing the athletic trainer support. And then we've contracted with Prisma, and Prisma is helping us out, but that support we can't say is going to be consistently there. And so because this is becoming an area where most athletic trainers prefer not to teach, and so that the market is that there's opportunities out there in other school districts that they don't, and other school districts or other providers that they don't have to teach. And so we're trying to make sure that we are addressing, one, that we don't create a shortage, because we've had 2 positions that have been vacant for 2 years because we haven't been able to find a trainer there. And then we're trying to make sure that we're being responsive to the needs and to the market, that we're not having others too, so we're not losing anyone else. Because we've had others that have said that, I'm going to start looking at other positions because they're not being effective in their role of teaching half day, then doing the athletic trainer responsibility half day and all evening. So the request is that we are going to take the current FTE that we're allocated to allow that to be the one full-time trainer that would only focus on athletic trainer for the students. And then the other one would still, the one that we're requesting here, the assistant athletic trainer, would be the one that would be providing the classroom instruction as well as the providing support after school with the training. And that's the request. Mr. Smith, is there anything you want to add that?
And part of the reason for this request too is, as Dr. Foster explained, the high school league now has open season longer than what they used to have. There used to be a closed season for sports and open season, but now with conditioning and training, a lot of sports have longer seasons now. And so to accommodate with the schedule, with the athletes that we have, and especially when you think about spring sports, there are numerous spring sports on a campus. A high school could be having 6 different sports going on, events going on at one time. So this will help us with that. And one piece that we didn't talk about is with that contract we have with Prisma, they also assist us, our middle school students, with athletics and all. And that way that this will make sure that we could keep someone there with our middle school students doing athletic events, because this year, with the shortage in athletic trainers, just like with everything else, like teachers, there have been some time when we did not have coverage. So again, to prevent liability towards the district, that's another reason for this.
Okay, and I'm going to back up just a little bit. Let's see, yeah, number 27. Nurse floaters, how many do we currently have?
We currently have 2 floaters.
Okay. And how many would you say on average cases do those 2 floaters see?
Well, this year's unusual because of the number of vacancies we have with nurses. Right now, we have 6 nursing vacancies as well as 3 of them on FMLA. And matter of fact, one of our floaters is no longer with us right now. So that number, this as of currently, is they can't get to where they need to go. So that was another reason we were asking for another floater.
Okay. All right. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. Okay, so let's go to line 32. Were these positions not funded last year? I'll ask that question first, and then I've got a couple of follow-ups here. Were the ones for line 32, were those not funded last year?
So there were, as I recall, there were 2 positions, and Stephen and Nancy, you have to confirm that there were 2 positions that were funded last year in the budget. And then this is an additional request that's being added for this year. So, and that's for the Performing Arts Center, Stephen, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. 2 last year.
So 2 last year, how many total, okay, so it'll be 4
With
total.
this request, Ms. Nash, it'll be a total of 3.
Total of 3?
With this request, the 2
Okay.
from last year plus 1 in this request.
Okay. Okay. So with that, one of the things that the board is kind of wondering, and it's come up, many different times on many different occasions, is that we still don't know how that space is going to be used and what positions are needed and how that space is going to be used. Is there like a marketing budget that's going to be needed to market the space? Like, what all is going to happen there?
Okay, Will had asked me to come in and answer some of these questions. For y'all that don't know me, I'm David Mitchell. I am the district auditorium manager for the district. And we have our current district auditorium that's been open for 28 years. And as it becomes more of Northeast Auditorium, we're trying to transfer those functions over there. So we actually do have a good idea of how it's going to function and what kind of events are going to be held there. Because even though that building is just now opening, it's just like when we opened the new Forest Lake and moved the teachers and students over, that becomes the new district auditorium. So we already have a full schedule of events that are likely to move over there. So we have a pretty good idea of how it's going to run. A typical staff for a theater that size would be more like 6. We're only starting with 3, and we'll move our existing staff over there as well to assist. But between the front office, somebody running lighting, somebody running video, somebody running audio, stage manager that has a very complicated fly system. Now we're up to 5. Those are just some of the positions. And of course, you've toured it, but you go to Grace Life.
Yes.
How many technicians are in the booth running a service behind you?
Oh, I know there's a lot of technicians back there, and we don't have enough.
So you already know the answer to the question. That there are like 6
Way to
people.
put me on the spot.
I'm just, just for an example though.
No, totally fine.
You totally know what I'm talking about as far as how many. Just the booth alone is running 3 people. So this is not a big ask as far as what it takes to run a theater of this size. And again, notice we don't have any auditoriums at our middle or elementary schools. All those shows have to go somewhere. So district auditorium has always served that purpose, and it's likely the PAC will carry that tradition on and serve that purpose as well.
That's kind of what we were looking for because we weren't really sure how that was going to work. So that gives some clarification so basically, just to make sure I heard what you said, the events that were at the other auditorium are slowly being moved to this auditorium.
That is the plan. In fact, the dream was we really didn't need a replacement building. We needed an additional building.
Okay.
There were enough events to run both of those full time, and so we'll likely still have tons of events.
Okay, and so then this is the last question. I don't know if you're the money guy, but if there is the money person in the room, do we know projected, ideally, based on the fact that some of those are moving over to this building, with it being more, the number of ticket sales that you can sell, that sort of thing, how much revenue will come from that, and then where that revenue will go?
That I do not have the answer on.
Okay, is there anybody who could help with that question?
So, Ms. Nash, we are currently looking at that, but that revenue would go back into supporting that facility, in the maintenance of it, in upgrading, because right now, there is no funding that comes along with that building. So the building will never be self-sustaining. However, we want to try to leverage it as much as possible, not just for our schools, but for our community, and therefore have some of the cost of maintaining the building be covered through events, similar to what we do with the conference center. But it will never be a fully self-sustaining facility because it will be used by schools also.
Yeah, we look at that savings as in, we did not have to build a $20 million facility at 42 campuses. We did it one time and we share it. And so the savings comes indirectly from that.
Okay, that definitely gives a lot of insight. Okay, thank you very much. And shout out to you for calling me out at Grace Light. I'm going to see you on Sunday. I'm just kidding. What service you go to? I'm just kidding. A little joke. Okay. Okay. All right, let's go on down to, let's see here. Now, I know we have like the salary increase number, line 31, for incentives for activity for bus drivers. Is that part of the salary, this study too, in some way, or is that a standalone?
That would not be part of the, well, hold on a second.
I guess probably a better question is, what would that entail?
Driver salary, because they are not annualized full-time drivers. The issue is, because they don't receive benefits, my pool of drivers that I have for activity drivers is very limited. For example, I have 19, but 15 of them have other jobs or Social Security where they can only make so much money a year. So actually I have 3 drivers that can drive all the time. In order to go out and compete with, because right now, I went out and looked, and there's a lot of people that are working 2 jobs. They have their normal job and they'll work the other job. Well, I got 15 of those, but their hours are limited. So my mindset is I need to go out and get like 50 of these people, because right now we're trying to juggle hours. This year, since yesterday, I went back and looked. We had to turn down 108 field trips that the schools requested because they just didn't have the drivers. That's quite a bit. And I know that's an important part of their academic learning. Whether it could be a sporting trip, band, petting zoo, whatever. But that's a lot to turn down. And I got to be able to compete with whatever, Amazon Prime, UPS, places like that, because they don't get benefits. I have to find a way to get that out there. And I did an example for charter buses that the schools sometimes have to go get because we don't have the drivers to do. I did a data study where if we did that with a driver that was paid $30 an hour, it cost us about $1,200 for Muller Middle School to go to Clemson University. 3 quotes, and these are actual quotes from charter buses. One was $2,500, one was $1,900. So that just gives you an idea of money, because I don't have the drivers to do it, that the schools are having to pay over what they would actually pay the district for the activity trips. So.
I do want to add something, if I can.
Dr. Elkins-Scott?
Yes, I know when I worked at Ridgeview, which was many years ago, I know we had our school administrators and a few of the coaches who end up getting their, what's that driver's license that you get? I can't think of the name of it.
CDL.
CDL, yes, to do that. And that helped with us for activities that we had to do. We just used in-house. Have you guys thought about maybe getting some of the administrators or some staff members paying for their CDL? Because, I mean, that worked for us many years ago, and I don't see why it wouldn't work now.
I currently do have several coaches and teachers that do have their CDLs that volunteered to drive trips. We just got it approved this year with collaboration with Dr. Foster over there, where they actually get paid to drive. In years past, they weren't. We've had a policy for a while that administrators could not drive. Hopefully we can get that changed. Athletic directors as well. So I do have some, but I can promise you I have no more than 10. And the problem with using those as well, because most of the time I need an activity driver is during hours where my regular route drivers are on the road. Because I have regular route drivers that can do trips on the weekends and in the evenings. It's those times where I don't have, that the buses are on the road taking students to school. I don't have enough activity bus drivers to go out there and do that. And obviously I can't pull a teacher out of the classroom to do that as well. So the teachers and the coaches, they do help in the evenings after, once they're done with their jobs during the day, but it's just not enough. And I've got to find some way where I can be competitive with the sector. I'm going to call it the civilian sector because I'm retired military, so that's what I'm calling it. I got to be able to compete with all the other entities out there in order to get us more drivers somehow.
Right, and my question was not so much pulling teachers from other schools to drive for a different school. We had people who were only doing activities for their school. So have we looked into maybe getting people per school and not so much driving for other schools? Because I know that will become a shortage issue and we're already short-staffed.
Correct. We do have drivers that drive just, of our teachers and coaches that drive just for their schools. The issue is during school hours. I cannot use those individuals.
Mr. Chair, or Ms.
Yes,
Nash?
Ms. McFadden.
So I understand completely because I have kids that are currently in school, and a lot of times that we have to, in our magnet programs, we have to actually pay, it's factored in for those other buses and the drivers. We've had times where, like you said, there's 108 field trips that have had to be canceled, and parents have to actually drive their car hours away instead of being able to be on a bus. So you have parents who are carpooling other people's kids and trying to get those papers signed and get permission at the last minute because they're not able to come. So I really will be trying to find some way to support that because field trips are an important extension to the educational process for kids.
And that's correct. I just want to add to, is because of the small numbers of people that I have, I don't have anybody on standby because I'm trying to support as many schools as I can. So, and they're all human, so if they call and say, hey, I've got the flu or I got COVID, well, guess what? You were scheduled for a trip, now I got to call that school, tell them I do not have a driver.
Okay, and then I missed one question, so I need to pop back up. But for line number 3, are we anticipating contracts to increase with these companies? And are we meeting our minority contract requirement at this time?
Ms. Nash, before they answer that
sure.
question, can I just go back quickly?
Yeah.
Something. Maybe that's an opportunity for us to consider R2I2 with getting some of our students who are of age certified. So when they graduate, they would be willing to come back and be some activity bus drivers or some other things. But I know that's a different time, but at least I want to put it out there. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, line number 3. Did you need me to reread that question for you?
No, that's okay.
Okay.
I've got it. Yes, we are anticipating an increase in the contracts. For example, some are decreasing. We have an overall decrease in the existing operation budget. Currently, is over budget by $57,725.60. We're expecting an increase in energy and utility-related cost of $675,858. A decrease in
Sorry, is that the increase? The amount is to that amount, or that's the increase?
That was an increase in energy and utility-related cost of $675,858. We are anticipating a decrease in landscaping and pesticide budget because we're currently over budget. We're not expending the budget. and that decrease will be $470,096. And finally, we are expecting an increase in the transportation-related maintenance and contractual service cost of $105,166, which totals $472,000 increase for the contractual services.
Okay?
I have a
Oh,
question.
and I'm sorry,
Oh,
I did miss one. Increase in safety and security contracts, 208, I didn't think that added up in my head. Increase in safety and security contracts, $218,797.60 increase for safety and security.
Okay, sorry, can you read that, tell me that last number again?
Sure, $218,797.60 for an increase in safety and security contracts.
797, okay, thank you. Ms.
Yeah,
McFadden?
I do have a question. You said that operations and landscape are over budget by 57,000 and then 470,000. What do you mean by that? That they're over
So
budget?
essentially, we budgeted too much for the expenditures that we're actually going to incur this year. So we'll actually adjust that budget next year to match the expenditures.
How is that done? Almost $500,000 over budget?
Well, that one was 57,725,000
For landscaping.
on landscaping.
So Ms. McFadden, what it's really saying is in prior years, the estimated budget was too high. And so we're adjusting a budget. So it's not, I don't want to say over budget as far as we've expended too much, but the initial estimate to add to each year's budget was estimated a little too high. So this number takes into consideration adjusting it to make it correct and then factoring in those other increases like for utility costs.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Okay, we got one more question, and then we're going to go to some board member things that board members would like to see on the list as we prioritize going forward. Okay, so last question, I believe, unless board members have any other question, was if we could get provided to the board with a line item budget for DEI department, for the DEI department.
Mm-hmm. I can do that for you.
Okay, and then, sorry, I've got one more question coming in. And then, have we explored using our future sites land as solar panel locations or even installing solar panels to help with energy bills?
Can you, I don't think I heard all that.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I read it really fast. Sometimes you have to slow me down, especially when it gets to closer to time. Okay, so the question was, have you all explored using our future sites land, like our sites and land, as solar panel locations for even installing solar panels to help with some of our energy cost?
And the answer is, we have looked at that, Ms. McFadden. Unfortunately, Mr. Anderson's not
it
here.
wasn't Ms.
I mean,
McFadden.
sorry, Ms. Nash. I'm looking at Ms. McFadden. And Mr. Anderson is not here to give you the full details. However, the cost savings is minuscule, and what's coming out of current legislation is not providing the same level of cost savings for the utility company. So there's changes taking place, legislative changes taking place around solar, but we have considered that because we do actually have some solar in our district already. And so we can address that at the next board meeting and get some more information to you. But we have looked at it because I had a conversation with Mr. Anderson. He
So even
covered
like,
it.
because I know they have like.
Can you help me out, Kelly?
Shingles and things too.
Yes, ma'am. So
Yeah.
to that point, Ms. Nash, we have some facilities that have the solar, but what we're finding and with the way things are changing, that incentive that was being promoted is being phased away. So by the time we invest that money in solar, it'll be 30 to 40 years before we even remotely see any of that return back. So the risk is not worth it at the end of the day to do that.
Makes sense. Okay. And then here, okay, so let's do some wish list things that the board would like to see as we prioritize and go through all of this. Oh, sorry. Oh, you know what? Did I miss one? Oh, that's the one I asked. He said he'll get that to us. Yeah, I got hers.
I have it now if you want it.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, I think it was requested that it be also emailed to the board.
Okay.
The email,
Sure.
yeah, isn't that what it says? She wants to email to the board? Yeah. It says if you could provide it. Yeah, she's not online, so if you could email it,
Sure.
would that work?
Yeah,
Okay.
that works.
That way everybody will have it, because she's not currently online, so, okay.
Ms. Nash, though, could we just read it into the record? Because if
Sure,
you're making
absolutely.
decisions,
Yeah.
you might want to have
Totally
that
fine,
information
yeah.
already.
But yeah, just make sure that it gets emailed, and then we're all good. Yeah, they're recording it. Yeah, if you could, that'd be great, thank
Sure.
you.
For the record, this is the proposed 24-25 DEI budget, and for the record, is the same as the current year budget, but professional development and training, $17,400. Travel and mileage, $2,000. Communication, which is cell phones, $1,000. And supplies and materials, $30,000, which totals $50,400. That's your operations budget for DEI.
I have a question about that.
Dr. Elgin Scott, you go ahead, we can hear you.
Yeah, seem like it should be more in that budget when we're talking about DEI, especially with the professional development, because how we're going to grow and how we're going to get the district where it needs to be with such a low budget. So I would love to see how that is actually increased. But also, my question would be, it says supplies and materials. Would that be because of the different events that we put on in the community, and that's the supplies and events?
Thank you, Dr. Scott. Yes, ma'am, that is for all of the events that we put on, for materials, for not only DEI work, but the military community liaison is also completely within that budget as well.
Okay, and then the professional development, I mean, that portion seems to be pretty low. So can you just kind of tell me a little bit about the professional development? And is that in-house, or is that also part of like maybe workshops and conferences as well?
For the most part, that is used for in-house professional development, and it's mostly professional development that I put on for district staff, as well as Ms. Carter for our military community liaison as well. In the past year, we have not hired anyone to do professional development specifically for DEI.
And I don't know if I can ask this to you, but maybe I can ask this question to Dr. Moore. In your professional experience, do you see that as a very low budget? Because in my opinion, I think that was low. I was kind of expecting a whole lot more in that area. So, or do you see that as really being pretty average, or is that a low budget?
Dr. Elkin Scott, I would say that it's a very lean budget for the amount of work that is done. We're fortunate in that we have 2 people in that department that bring a lot of skills to the table, so they are capable of doing the training themselves and not bringing in outside people. And they work very, very hard to be very cost efficient with their events that they plan and do. But to me, it's a very lean budget and a very small department. It's 3 people.
Mr. Chair?
And that's what I'm thinking too. I would love to see us increase the budget in that area, because when we're talking about the diverse population that we have in Richland too, and not so much the diverse in race, just in the student equality in just different areas, and training for teachers as well. I would love to see how we can increase the budget in that department.
Mr. Chair? So it does seem low because that doesn't include salaries, does it? That's not the overall budget for that department.
No, that does not include salaries.
Okay, so when we're talking about the different departments, we're not talking about the money that's actually going to the full department for that. We're just talking about the amount that they have to spend. So that's different. So, okay, so for instance, with our contracts and buses, they have theirs that they are spending, and then they have theirs that are their salary. So that's 2 different pots. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
So the numbers that we're looking at on here, which includes staff for a lot of these other places, that's separate. That's not them. These are just staff positions. These are not money that they're able to spend for their individual areas, is what I'm trying to understand.
When we're asking for individuals, that is salary. If we're asking for materials, that's obviously the cost for those materials. So for example, with the activity bus drivers, because that is an individual, that is the cost for the individual, not the salary. Well, that would be their salary, or they're not a salaried person, so I don't like to say salary. Right. But it would be what we are paying them for the time that they are driving the bus.
Understand that. So we're saying that some departments are getting their salary and extra money to spend, and other departments are only getting barely their salary.
Each department receives money for what they need to perform.
Right.
So for example, academics has salaries because we have employees, but it also receives money for instructional materials. It receives money for other things. The same with special education, pupil services, HR. Every department, even transportation, receives additional funding to cover training costs that they have, materials and supplies that they purchase. In addition to whatever else they need. They would need to purchase fuel for buses, which we would not have to purchase out of academics because they don't have buses to do that for.
I understand that completely. So, but what I am saying is that this only has 2 people in this department, and the total amount of money that's funneled through this one department, their salaries and extra spending, that is a lot more than what a lot of other places, other departments are getting. I'm just trying to make sure, because when she said 50,000 as well, that doesn't include the 2 salaries that are included in that. So this particular department has X amount of money, and I just want to make sure that that's clear across other departments. Because we had someone come up to us that was talking about the R2E school. They have 4 employees, but I don't think those 4 employees have the amount of money in their full department that this one does. And I'm just saying, when we're talking about spreading out the wealth to where everyone is covered, that we're making sure that we do this. But I do think that the amount that's being spent is kind of low considering the professional development. However, the full amount that's going to that department for the 2 employees and what they're spending is just a little off, because it's kind of misleading that it's only $50,000 for that department.
And you're absolutely right, Ms. McFadden, it did not include salaries, but I would say that if you looked at that department's budget to include the 3 people that are in that department, it is still one of the leanest departments that we have across our district. But every department receives funding, additional funding, not salaries, funding based upon what they are needing to do within that department. And so some of our departments receive a lot more money because of the work that they are doing. And one of those departments is academics. It receives a tremendous portion of the budget because of the work that they're doing, which is servicing almost 29,000 students. And so this line item that we just shared, the $50,000, does not include the salary of the 3 people that work in that department.
Okay, so now we will move on to more wish lists. And if anybody online has any more, I think I have the ones that we have here, but if you guys have any more, just let me know. So the other thing, conversation, lobbyists would like to see items such as health insurance and any other non-funded state items mandates funded from the state, or for pay in positions not funded because we have to fund those above items. And so looking at having a lobbyist to basically lobby for us for those things are something that board members, that was something that has come up for, to be on that list of the long list, so.
So yes, Ms. Nash, and so we are currently looking into that. Had a meeting actually right before this meeting. We are reaching out to find out if we are legally able to hire a lobbyist, because we do have a board policy that does talk about lobbyists, but in the respect of we cannot pay for membership of our employees in organizations that hire a lobbyist. So because we can't pay for their membership, the question is, can the district hire a lobbyist, and we don't have clarity on that yet. So we are researching that question.
Okay, and so that will be out there for, and of course, any of these, if you could just send to all board members, because I didn't specify names on these. So just any answers to these, if we could get all of it, just be sent to all board members so that everybody is on the same page would be great. And so that is all that we have. Is there anybody online? Do you guys have any questions, ladies, online, or any comments, questions, things I missed?
Chairwoman Nash, this is Ms. Washington.
Vice Chair, yes.
Vice Chair, I'm sorry.
Yes.
So first, I just want to say thank you, because it's very easy to get documents and not have clarity around numbers and processes. And one of the things that I know that we have asked for continuously in the past is help us to kind of understand how things function so that then we can understand the bigger picture, which is where we are today, understanding the budget. And so I want to say thank you to administration for being present and answering the questions, because it provides us with clarity. And Dr. Moore, as you say, clarity is kind. It provides us with clarity to have a greater understanding of the budget process and financing. Let me be very clear. We don't get this in our training with the South Carolina School Board Association. And I have asked for this over and over and over. When you just give me a basic of what finances look like, but this gives us a better understanding of the budget process, the budget, and how our district is operating from a higher level. So thank you all for providing the information. And this was in no shape, form, or fashion to be able to take away from your day-to-day work that you're doing, but it helps us to have a clear picture of where we want to head based on our priorities.
Ms. Porter or Dr. Elkin Scott?
Thank you for everyone who is here today and answering the questions. Thank you.
And I would like to say thank you to everyone as well, but I'm still puzzled. I mean, we've gone over all of this information, but we still have not made any decisions about the millage. So are we getting to that today, or is this just clarity for questions that people have had, and then we're coming back to that at a later time?
It's my understanding that, I'll let you speak to that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I missed half of that, but I
She was
think you were
asking-
asking about what we were going to do about, actually, Dr. Moore is going to, just a moment, we're going to go over the timeline. I think that'll answer your question.
Well, not so much timeline. I mean, I think some of us expressed concerns about things we wanted to see added and some things we wanted to see removed. So that's what I need to hear. Are some of those things going to be added or removed, or we come back at a later time to have that discussion?
Yeah, I think we're going to end up coming back at a later time, because I believe,
Okay.
I believe what you're talking about is going to require us to take a few votes.
Okay,
And
okay.
that's, after hearing everything today, that's what I think we're going to end up doing.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
So,
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I
Ms.
would like to
McFadden.
say, because this will be the third meeting, because we got this information at the workshop on the 16th. We've got this one, and now we're going to schedule another meeting to go over the same thing. And when I came in, the first thing I said is, can we go ahead and figure out this zero meal before we do anything? Because we can only do $16.9 million right now. And right now, all of this is over, and we have, even if we do the mandated things, it's still over. So we need to figure that out, and then because it has to be turned in on the 2nd. And then come back and do the 10 through 32 if we want to. Because we don't know if they're going to pass a meal, but we need to do the 1 through 9 and get that down before we send it on May the 2nd. Because right now, if they approve the meal, they go 1 through 9. So what they're looking at, they're saying, okay, 1 through 9, this is what you guys are going to do. But look down here at 22, they don't have the compliance in. So you know what? We're only going to approve 0, but it's only going to include the numbers 1 through 9. So when they go through, if they say, oh, we want to do, we'll do over meal 3.2 3.2%. Well, that 3.2% may only include number 10, 11, and 12. That's why the priorities and the numbers matter. Because, and you know, we spoke about this on the phone. So if they say, we'll do 3.2 over the mill, well, the only thing that we're going to be able to do is 10, 11, and 12. And I'm not sure because like Ms. Washington said, they don't teach us this at the South Carolina School Board Association. And when I've been through this in the past, it's been the same way. So what I want to understand is, are we able, after we submit it, to come back in here and change it for a second or third reading and send it back to them according to the timeline? That means we're going to have more meetings to do that. And we are wasting taxpayers' time. This meeting was supposed to come in here and get this done. But every time we have a workshop, we're not completing our work. We're passing it on to another day. I would like to make the suggestion to do the work and get this completed at least from 1 to 9 mil, and that's just what I'm saying, because availability is hard. This meeting was scheduled at the last minute. We had to rush around. I'm wondering, am I going to have to cancel my meeting on Tuesday and tell my people? Or are we going to have to come back in here and find another space? Those kind of things. And it's really difficult to get everyone together to get this done. So I would like to suggest we at least get the 1 through 9 done, or that 16.9 million, if we can get a board consensus to extend past 4 o'clock.
Okay.
Yes, hold on, Dr. Moore.
Ms. McFadden raises a good point, which is why we're going to go through the timeline. So I'm going to ask if Mr. Struthers can present the timeline as well as provide any clarity around what adjustments can be made so that the board can make an informed decision.
Sure, I'd be glad to. If possible, I think it would be important to decide as a board and as a district tonight whether we want to pursue a full mill request or a half mill request or a zero mill request, and because of the fact that we have to take this before county council next week. Now, if we decide that we want to do the full mill request, then we know that we are, and that if we're granted that, then we'll receive the $29 million extra in revenue. And then at that point in time, we can probably adjust priorities. If we request the zero mill request, then we're limited to 1 through 9. We don't get the opportunity to go back at that point in time and say we want more. But be aware that if we do request a zero mill, if we don't request any mill increase, then whatever we can fit in that $22 million, whether or not shifts take place, we have to fit our budget within that $22 million. Not to say that we can't shift at that point, which we can. We've got a second reading to go through and we can shift priorities as long as they fit within that $22 million. And we can go midway and say that we want to request the additional amount that would, with a 9.7 mil increase. At the same time, if we're granted that, we can still go back and shift our priorities as long as it fits within that budget that the county grants us. If we go for the full mill increase, the same thing. We have to fit our budget request within 29 million. We can certainly shift those priorities around at that time. But if it's possible, I think we need to make that decision tonight because we need to go to the county council next week and let them know what we want to do.
Well, unfortunately, they can't vote at a board workshop.
Okay.
But we have to submit the budget, first draft of our budget, to county council by May 2nd. For the first reading, and then what's the next date for county council? Because I don't have my notes in front of me.
I did not bring the timeline with me, do you?
I can speak to that if you want me to.
Thank you,
So
Nancy.
the actual first reading is on May the 7th. There is a public hearing where we are able to speak on our request. That's on May 23rd. The second reading is on June the 6th. And the third reading for the county is on June 18th.
And Nancy, if what we submit on May 2nd, because first reading is May 7th, if changes are made during that window between this, can we make changes May 2nd through May 7th?
Yes, we can.
Okay, which would then, looking at the calendar, Mr. Chair, May 2nd is Thursday of next week. May 7th is Tuesday, of which we have our board meeting that night. So if the board wants to take a vote prior to us submitting May 2nd, we would need to have a special call board meeting prior to May 2nd.
Okay, well, let me ask a couple of questions just to make sure I understand exactly what we're talking about. If we submit a budget on May 2nd, well, or if if we submit a budget with no millage request, no increase request, after, we obviously wouldn't, we're not asking for an increase, so there won't be any decision for them to make on that, but we would be able to adjust. In other words, for example, if there was an item listed with 1 through 9 right now, if we decided after the fact, before we have our second reading, we could adjust things around ourselves. But what we can't do is adjust the top number there. In other words, our 20, whatever the number is there, we can't go outside of that. That's our parameter, but we can move items around.
That is correct, because what the county is deciding on is our revenue.
Right.
And we could decide what expenses we would like to try to fit into that revenue that we would receive.
So the county doesn't, they don't care where we spend the money, they just give us the number that we can spend.
That is correct.
Okay, with that in mind, if the board did not wish to ask for a millage increase, do we have to vote on that? Or is that a default position?
I'm pretty sure, I do believe that we did vote. We still had to vote.
Okay.
Whether it was increase or not to increase. We definitely voted for that.
We have to provide,
And Dr.
we have to
Elkin-Scott-
provide that document, we do.
Right.
Yeah.
And Dr. Elkin-Scott, you can speak to that, because last year we did vote on to increase or not increase, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so one way
May
or
I
the other.
interject?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, please.
No, I think it's much easier if, to change, if you're going down in what was submitted to county council as opposed to going up. And so what I mean by that is if you decide to go for, submit a budget on May the 2nd with the millage increase, it's easier to go back and say, oh, no, we changed our mind, versus going the opposite direction of saying, no, we don't need a millage increase. And then, a few days later or 2 weeks later, submitting something saying, yes, we indeed do need a millage increase.
And let me give an example to add to that. Currently in the legislative, the House funded the full salary increase and an additional $30 million to education. The Senate budget fully funded the pay raises for teacher increase, but did not put any additional funds in the budget. Session is still going on, and then you will have conferences. So out of the conference, additional funding could come to say that we would receive additional money and now not need as much money as we are requesting. Is that correct, Stephen?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you. So that's the point that Ms. Williams is making. It's easier to go back and say we need less money than to go and say we need more money. But it is the board's decision.
Mr. Chair, but I do believe, though, that if you do ask for it, they don't refund the taxpayer for that mill. That is not something that happens. If we were and we don't need it, it doesn't go back to the taxpayer.
That's correct, but they won't make a decision on that until,
Madam
Okay.
Vice Chair, and Mr. Chair, I have a question
Yes.
for Dr. Moore. So has this been shared, or, I know that we had our workshop at the beginning of April, which kind of gave us an overview, but have we talked to our community advisory committees, to some of the different groups, to share these various priorities and needs and see how they feel, because they are taxpayers in this district? Have we gotten any feedback from them? Because I think what the board is trying to stress is that we understand that there are priorities, but it's inflation. I just had a parent talk about the cost of groceries and how how her kids are eating her out of her house and home. I'm just being honest. Gas is up, and it's easy for us to say, well, yeah, $128, that's nothing. Well, you have 5 cars in your yard, that is something. So I just want to know if we've talked to these various groups, and it's easy to think, well, they should have come to the public input to give us input on that, but they didn't have these numbers prior to this date. And so I just want to know if we've gotten a feel of how are some of those different groups feeling about if we have to increase millage based on these priorities.
And the answer to that, Mrs. Washington, is yes. We have spoken to all of our advisory groups. We even had a special called meeting for our classified staff because they weren't scheduled to meet until after we came to the board meeting. Our parent advisory group, we presented to them as well as to our teacher forum. So yes, we presented to every group. The biggest topic and the questions that we received information from in each of those meetings was around salaries, and in particular for our classified staff, it was the compensation, which is number 5 for the classified staff. One of the questions that was asked was, is there a state mandated salary schedule for our classified staff? And the answer to that is no. Is there a state mandated requirement to give classified staff a step increase? And the answer to that is no. The only group of people that are required by the state to receive a step are teachers or people that are paid on the teacher's salary, as well as the salary schedule that comes out of the state is for our teachers. So the question was asked, and the feedback that we received was mainly around compensation.
Yeah, and I think I'm asking, do they know that administration is proposing a meal
Yes, we showed them the superintendent's recommended budget, and we were very clear. It's a recommendation to the board. We also talked to them, I emphasized to them, we're talking about 7% of the budget that we have the flexibility to use, because 83% of the budget is salaries. And then the next 7% is our fixed cost, things that we have to pay, which basically leaves us about 7% of the budget to fit all of the $50 million worth of requests into to spend. And so we did show them the budget. We asked for their feedback on the budget. Some people obviously wanted us to move some things around, like, you know, our transportation would love to see the activity bus drivers get more money. And different departments wanted, very much like when they came and spoke to us during the budget hearings. You know, our MLL teachers want more support. Our special education teachers want more support. Our athletic trainers and athletic directors want more supplements for our coaches and more support on the field. So everybody appreciated all of those things, but if they had to select one thing, which is what we asked, what's the top 3? Compensation was in the top 3 for every group that we spoke to. Parents' biggest concern was, are we going to have a teacher in the classroom for our student?
Mr. Chair.
And every parent in that group is aware that we are saying we want to raise taxes.
We did cover, yes, we covered the millage rates with them, so they understand that, and we walked them through what Act 388 says and the numbers that Nancy shared during the board workshop last week around it doesn't affect your home, but it does affect your vehicle, and the example that she gave versus $20,000 car versus a $100,000 car. So yes, we did share that information. They basically received the same presentation that we gave to the board.
Mr.
And
Chair.
what about I'm sorry, Ms. McFadden.
No, go ahead.
There's one more group, because we just met with realtors and with our business owner community group, because that's where it's going to impact. And I'm going to advocate for my small business owners in Richland County. That's where the money's going to be felt for so I want to make sure that we are also we have all these groups, and I want to make sure everybody understands the impact that this is going to have. And it may seem like a small impact, but when you have businesses that are closing day after day, it is not always because they don't know how to manage their money. And so I want to make sure that we've had this discussion with the people where they're going to receive the impact.
We did not, I don't have a business advisory group, so no, I did not meet with our
No, but there
business
is a
advisory
community
group.
group full of business owners, because I'm on this list. I'm on some lists with Richland too, and it's full of business owners. And so I want to make sure that that group knows that we are also increasing taxes, or that administration is proposing to the board to increase taxes.
Can I add something to that?
Yes, yes, please go ahead.
The only thing I was going to say, I understand what Mrs. Washington is talking about, because in prior budget conversations, we normally go out to the community and just to get feedback from the community during these budget workshops time, just to get, just to share with them what we are planning to do, not that we're going to, but what we have planned and discussion. So I completely understand what Mrs. Washington is talking about, because in the past, that's what we have done, especially when we're thinking about raising the millage. Now, if we're not considering that, then we don't do it. But anytime we're considering raising the millage, we always go out into the community and have like a community forum just to get the pulse of the community and what their thoughts are. We do it with the teachers, and I think we, Dr. Moore has already said that's something we've already done with faculty and staff, and I get that. But we also normally do that with the community and with the business, small business owners as well. Thank you.
Also, we do, I'm not sure if this answers part of your question or not, but we are required by law to advertise 10 days prior to our second reading before a millage increase is approved to the community, and put that in the paper to show that we are requesting a millage increase for the community to see.
Mr. Chairman.
All right, Ms. Nash and Ms. McFadden.
Yeah, I understand the newspaper article thing, because like I said, I've served on things where we do that. Nobody reads that. Nobody reads it. But I think that, I mean, I agree with my colleagues. I think one of the biggest things with our business community that we see, it's easy to tell people that, okay, well, it's only a car that's $20,000. Well, I can tell you, my husband does all the car commercials. There is no $20,000 car. That car basically doesn't exist. Your average car, even if it's a decent car, used is $40,000. That's the general use of an average car currently. And you can't find a used car, so you're forced into getting a $40,000 car. You add that up with already all of the prices that are happening right now, and again, businesses, things of that nature, and it's one of those things where we've talked about it before, about advocating on the county level about when things like Scout come, because that's a lot of money that could be generated for our schools, but we're giving tax incentive there, and the school doesn't see those directly. So yeah, while I totally understand that's the process, nobody really reads that in the paper. They really don't. And having a conversation with them, definitely going forward in the future, if there is a consideration in raising millage, would be definitely beneficial. I can tell you as a realtor, the realtors would have a lot to say.
Mr. Chair, both Ms. Washington and Ms. Nash answered, because I was going to talk about the cars and the business owners, but they've covered it, so thank you.
All right, thank you. For the record, I drive a 97 Ford, so I don't, it won't affect me a lot. But anyway, okay, it looks to me, and this is what I'm going to suggest to the board, is that Tuesday evening after, I would suggest 7 o'clock or so, that we would have a special call meeting for the sole purpose. Yeah, well, that would work out. The sole purpose of voting on the millage increase or not having a millage increase, which is what a minimum we would have to do. Is that correct, Dr. Moore? It would be a very short meeting, and it could be joined
Mr. Chapman,
virtually.
you said the meeting would take place at 7 o'clock p.m.?
That's what I think. Well, that's what I would recommend. That would not interfere with the other plans that have been made, and it would be a very short meeting because, and I think I'm assuming that everybody feels very confident in the information we received this evening, and your questions have been answered. If anybody,
Why 7 o'clock? I'm just curious, why
no, because
7 p.m.?
because there's a committee meeting at 5:30, and that would give the committee time to have their meeting.
What committee, you mean a Richland 2 committee?
Yes,
meeting?
yes, the legislative committee meets at 5:30 on
Okay,
Tuesday.
okay, this takes precedence over that. So I would like for us to reschedule a legislative committee meeting, and let's get to the business of this budget. And I don't think anyone should object to that, because this is more pressing than anything else, because the legislative meeting, this is the last week that the legislators will be doing any business. So I don't understand the purpose of having a 7 o'clock meeting because of a legislative committee meeting.
Yes,
when
Dr. Scott, and
legislators-
I factored that in because I was uncertain, so I do have other arrangements, so this does
Thank
take.
you, Ms. McFadden.
This does take precedence, so I can reschedule that for Monday, the 29th, and Tanedra has already trying to work out a plan for our room, so I don't have a problem with changing it to 5:30 again. I'll just have to let my people know. This is the third time we've had to cancel it.
Well, I'll be frank, it's a little difficult to get here at 5:30, and I have to make sacrifices in my life to do that, and I really don't see the reason we couldn't have it at 7, but I will send an email out and get everyone's opinion on that, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anybody have any other questions, concerns, or comments? All right, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Oh, wait, I do, because
Yes.
you said it's going to be a short meeting. However, depending on what we vote, if we vote for zero meal, either way it goes, we need to make sure that we only have that first 9 done.
No, we can adjust it later. We can talk, we can do that, but we can adjust it later. At our next board meeting, we could adjust it.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's-
Yeah, that's why I asked him, I want to make sure that would be.
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing that we have to vote on is if we want to ask for a millage increase.
Okay, all right.
So that would be literally the only thing we would have to do. If we want to talk about other things, we can, but that would be the
Okay.
purpose
Yes,
of the
sir.
special call meeting. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move to adjourn what day is it? Oh, board workshop, Friday, April 26, 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion has been made by Mrs. Nash, seconded by Mrs. McFadden to adjourn the meeting. We'll have a hand vote, and all those that are not present, if you would voice your vote. All those
This
present.
is Monica.
Is
My
that-
hand is raised.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
All right, Miss Porter and Miss Washington?
Yes for Porter.
All right.
Yes for Washington.
All right, the vote is unanimous. We are adjourned.